Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So investment demand curve represents the relationship between the interest rate and the investment. Interest rate is the marginal cost or the cost of the borrowing. So how is the relationship between the interest rate and the investment is done? It is the negative relationship between the interest rate and the level of the investment. Now you can see this is the interest rates. As the interest rates are increasing, the level of the investment is decreasing. And on the basis of this, we are going to plot this investment curve, investment demand curve. On the x-axis, we have got the investment, that is in terms of the billions of dollars, and on the y-axis, we have got the interest rate in terms of the percentages. Now you can see, as the interest rate is increasing, the level of investment is being decreased. But as the interest rate is being decreasing, the level of the investment is being increased. That's why there is the negative relationship between the interest rate and the level of the investment. Now, how does this negative relationship exist? Because of the fact fewer projects are expected to provide the high returns, so less will be invested if the interest rates are high. For example, if the interest rates is equal to the 12%, so only those people are going to take the loan from the bank who are going to invest in the projects which is giving them more than that 12% as the expected rate of the return. But if the expected rate of the return is lesser than that of the 12%, they are not going to take the loan from the bank. It shows an inverse relationship between the real interest rate and the quantity of the investment demanded. For example, if the 10 billion of the investment spending will be undertaken at a 12% interest rate, it means that 10 billion of the investment projects are actually those projects which are going to yield an expected rate of return of greater than the 12%, greater or more or equal to that of the 12%. So whenever the interest rate are high, it means only those persons are going to take the loan from the banks which are going to invest those funds in such projects which are going to yield them the expected rate of return greater than that interest rate of 14% or 15% or even 13%. So that's why there exists a negative relationship between the interest rate and the level of the investment. So this is the investment demand curve. If the investment in the country has been increased, the investment demand curve is going to move out like this. And then if the investment in the country has been decreased, the investment demand curve has to move in this direction. Now, what is the reason of the increase of the investment, of the increase in of the decrease in the investment? This represents the shifting of the schedule. Now, the shifting of the schedule is not because of the interest rate. These are because of the other factors, other important factors, but not the interest rate. But if we have moved on from this point towards that of this point, this represents the movement along the schedule, and this change in the investment is actually due to that of the interest rate. So there are two types of movements whenever we are dealing with that of the curve. One represents the movement along the curve, another represents the movement of the curve. So the movement along the curve, for example, if we move from the point A towards the point B, this type of movement represents the movement along the curve, and the reason of this movement along the curve is the change in the interest rate. But if the curve has moved from here, it means that the increase in the investment. If the curve has moved in this direction, it means the decrease in the investment. It could be due to some other reasons which I'm going to describe afterwards, but not the interest rate. This represents the movement of the curve. Now, this movement of the curve is actually the shifts of the investment demand curve. Now, the shifts in the investment demand curve occur when any determinant apart from the interest rate changes. Now, what type of movement which is due to that of the interest rate is actually the movement along the curve. But whenever there is the movement of the curve, so it is all because of those factors which are not actually the interest rate but other than that of the interest rate. So one thing is that greater expected returns create more investment demand, shift the curves towards the right. The reverse will cause a leftward shift. For example, if the economic conditions of the country are very good, the people are expecting that they are going to take the money from the bank and invest it they are going to generate the expected rate of return which is greater than that of the interest rate. They are going to demand more of the investment. But for example, if the current situation of the Pakistan persists, that means that economic conditions are not good, even the government has reduced the interest rate, the people are not going to take the loans from the banks, because they think if they're going to invest into the investment projects, the expected rate of return which they are going to generate from it will be lesser than that of the interest rate. So according to the rule, if the expected rate of return is less than that of the interest rate, they are not going to opt for the investment decision. So how do the expected rate of return changes? What are the factors which are going to affect the expected rate of return? Number one is the acquisition, maintenance, and the operational cost. Acquisition, it means how you are going to acquire some capital. More the acquisition cost is, it means lesser the expected rate of return in the initial stages. If more the maintenance cost is lesser the expected rate of the return, and more the operating cost is, it means that lesser the expected rate of return. So all these costs are going to make up this high cost. If the higher the cost is, lower with the expected rate of return. The second thing is the business taxes. Business taxes affects your economic activity in a negative way. As it has going to generate decline, it results into the decline in the economic activity. More you have got taxes, increased taxes, the lesser you will have the profit, because the disposable income is always equal to the income minus the taxes. More the taxes you have, lesser is your disposable income. Lesser the taxes you have, more is your disposable income. So increased taxes lower the expected rate of return, and decreased taxes increases the expected returns. Technological change often involves lower cost, which would increase the expected returns. The incorporation of the technology into the production processes, first it increases the cost, and after that it replaces, as the technology is in the form of the capital intensive technology or the labor saving technology. So at first step you have incurred some cost, and after that it reduces your cost of the production or per unit cost of the production. Lesser the cost of the production is, more is the expected rate of return. Stock of the capital goods on hand. This represents your the inventories. If there is an abundant idle capital on hand because of the weak demand or the recent investment, or the new investment would be less profitable. So more you have inventories, lesser you are going to invest. Lesser you have got the inventories, more you are going to invest. Firms with excess production capacity have the little incentive to invest in the new plant. Excess production capacity means whatever is your full potential capacity. For example, if a unit has got the potential capacity of producing 50 fans per day, and if it is producing 30 fans per day, so its actual production is less than that of the potential production. So the firm is the owner of the firm is not going to invest in other plant, or in order to install another plant or the other investment project. But if the firm has got the demand to produce 60 or 70 fans per day, and the plant cannot produce that by potentially reaching a maximum capacity, then the owner has got the incentive, or it has got the reason to invest into the new project. Therefore, less investment is forthcoming at each real interest rate, and the investment demand curve shifts towards the leftward. Expectations, business expectations, are the businessman's expectations about the future economic and the political conditions, both in aggregate and in certain specific markets. If someone is optimistic, he is going to make the investment, then the investment curve is going to move out, and someone is pessimistic and risk aversive, then he is not going to invest in these conditions as the current Pakistani conditions, then the investment curve is going to move inwards. Instability of the investment. Among the GDP, there are the four components: C, that is the consumption; I, that is the investment; G, that is the government expenditures; and X, and that represents the net exports. Among all the four variables, investment is the highly unstable and a highly volatile factor. So this is an example. This is the data which I have taken from for the case of the Pakistan, and you can see that this red line that representing the gross investment, and this blue line is representing that of the changes in the GDP. Then you can see that the investment is much more volatile as compared to that of the GDP. This is the data of the Pakistan, and why the investment is so much volatile, and what are the reasons that the behavior of the investment is variable? It depends upon the durability. Number one is the durability. Now, durability represents the your dependent time period of the life of any capital stock which you have. More the durable capital you have, lesser the investment which you are going to make in the future, and lesser the durable capital you have, more the investment you have to make in the future. Irregularity of the innovations. Innovations actually is the to produce new thing. Invention is actually the exactly new thing, and innovation is the upgradation of some features of that thing. For example, if the telephone was of the mobile phone first was devised, that was the innovation, and that was the invention actually. And the new models which we are going to see day by day, and the Android phones and all the smartphones, they are representing the innovations. Now, innovations in this world doesn't occur at a regular interval, that we cannot say that there is a new invention after every week, there is a new invention after every month. There is the irregularity of the innovations. Now, whenever the new innovation is going to come, and this is going to generate the investment opportunities for lots of the people. For example, if the telecommunication is concerned, when there is the innovation of the telecommunication in the form of the mobile phones, and along with that there was the surge of the investment, and after that there was when the mobile phones has combined, when there was the innovations of the smartphones or the Android phones, there was a surge of the investment in the form of the auctions of the licensing in the form of the 3G and the 4G. And next is the, you can see the more innovations over there. Now there is third thing is the variability of the profits. Now, if the two brothers, for example, two brothers are going to invest and in the same way, and they are going to make the factories in the same way, they have to purchase the same capital, it is not the surety that whether the profits of both the brothers are the same. They may be the variable, because of the fact that the production decisions and the managemental styles of both the brothers, and how they keep up their labors, and how they have the contacts with the customers, and how they are going to track the records of their orders delivery, it all depends upon it is all going to determine the level of the profit. There is a variability of the profit. You cannot guess your profit, that if someone is going to earn this much, then I'm going to earn that same one. Maybe you will be in a position to earn more, and maybe you will be in a position to earn less. And the variability of the expectations is the same. It all depends upon the personality of a person, whether he's a risk lover or is the risk averse. If he's a risk taker, then he is going to make the bold steps and make the investment decisions. Maybe he can gain much more, or maybe he lose. If someone is risk aversive, then it means that he's going to save his investment, and he's going to invest in a safe manner, that there will be no harm towards his money. So all these are all the factors which are going to determine why the investment is the volatile. And initially they were the factors, they were going to determine why the investment demand curve moves outwards, it means leading towards the increase in the investment, and why the investment demand curve moves backward, leading towards the decline in the investment. All it depends upon the change in the expected rate of the return. And there were the other factors, that why the expected rate of return changes, because of the inventories at your hand, because of the excess capacity, production capacity, because of the expectations, taxes, and technological changes. So all those factors are going to change your expected rate of return, and if the expected rate of return increases, your investment increases, and if the expected rate of return decreases, your investment decreases. So this is the end of the chapter, in which we have defined that what do you mean by the investment, what are the basic things which we have to acquire, which we need in order to make the investment decisions. What is the difference between the nominal interest rate and the real interest rate, and what is the investment demand curve, and what is the difference between the movement along the curve and movement of the curve of the investment demand curve. Movement of the curve occurs because of the change in the expected rate of the return, and movement along the curve occurs because of the change in the interest rate.